On today's episode, our special guest is Andy Boxall from Digital Trends. We talk about the iPhone battery fiasco, his experiences at shows like Hyper Japan, and his impressions of things he's observed within the fandom. Let's get this show rolling. Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Not bad.
That's good.
Yeah, sorry. It's sometimes I go to sleep real late. Can't sleep, so sometimes 11 is a little bit early for me.
Right. Okay. Well, it's 5:10 here, so it's definitely not early. I have no excuse for being if I was sleepy.
So you're from England?
Yes, I live near London.
But you were born and raised too?
Yes.
Wow, that's cool. Because I don't know if you can tell from your picture, and from your writing too. So.
Yeah, well, it's confusing anyway because I write for a US-based site, so I use US spelling, and obviously most of the people who read it is American, so it just looks as if I'm American. I also report tons of American news, so yeah, it's a common mistake.
so that's something you actually have to consider when in your writing. You have to spell things the American way, quote unquote.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have to use American spelling. It doesn't always work because my editor will say, well, I still pick that up occasionally. There'll be U's that slip into color and things like that. So
I see. No, that's cool. But that's really cool. There's a lot of things like that you kind of don't realize. The world has gotten so small in the last 10, 15 years since I was in college. Some of these things you kind of don't realize. Things have to be changed and be different. And
yeah, absolutely. Particularly if you're going to do it professionally, you need to, maintain a particular style on a site. And if I work for a US site, then I better write the American way.
Yeah.
But I still rebelliously put in English spelling in places that isn't published, so I maintain the UK way if I can.
Yeah, that's funny. There's a lot of actors that they're on popular shows here that they have a British accent, but you don't hear it because on TV they're playing I guess American characters.
Yeah, it happens a lot, right?
Yeah, there's a lot, and I was super surprised when I started looking into it because there's a lot of really popular shows with popular actors. I think a lot of people might not even know.
Yeah, I think probably Hugh Laurie as House.
Yeah, Hugh Laurie. There's Andrew Lincoln, right?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then
right.
I think the guy who plays Superman.
I forget his name. And Christian Bale obviously does a good American accent.
That's funny.
But yeah, absolutely. I don't have to do that. Luckily, I only have to do it in my writing. So I guess I have an American accent with my writing.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, man, that's cool because there's a lot of stuff. There's even more stuff because there's a book series that's really popular, and I don't know if it's popular in England or popular here, but it's what is it called? It's the one that basically breaks down all the differences between sayings in the UK versus what they mean in the UK. Well, what they mean when you say them, but what they actually mean. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know the one that you mean.
I had a friend. I had a WOTA friend tell me about it. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's like basically when you guys say something like, "Oh, well, that's good," or it actually means it's not good, or
right. Yeah.
There's a big, huge difference in the language between, even though it's still basically the same language, but the meanings are different between what we say.
Yeah, very much. And I think that a lot of that comes down to the British character anyway, where we'll say something that's very non-committal or, it's got to sound right. We don't want to hurt your feelings, but ultimately we're denying any involvement and we're not going to do anything at all about that.
Yeah.
But you'll understand just from the way that I'm saying it, and you'll not take offence, and you'll know when you walk away, think, yeah, he's not going to do anything about that because that's just the way it is.
But you say that's the British personality or the character you said?
Yeah, I think so. I think it definitely has its roots in being British.
I see. And my friend from England, he's always talking about like, oh yeah, that's so American of you. You're a typical American, David. I'm like, really? What's a typical? Because I'm Chinese. My parents were from Taiwan, so they came here. They immigrated. So like all my life growing up, they were always like, you're so American. Oh, don't be eating hot dogs and hamburgers. You need to be more Chinese. So they're always trying to push me to be more Chinese. And I feel like there's some things that are very Chinese about myself. So it's really funny when my friends are like, oh, that's so American of you. I'm like, really? Because I thought that was, I think I'm like pretty far away from the typical American, I think.
It sounds like you just get to pick and choose which bits you want to be. Maybe the bits you want to be Chinese are Chinese,
Right.
the bits that you want to be are American.
Yeah. It's been a really interesting thing because here everybody sees me Chinese, but when I go back to like China or Taiwan, they're always like, oh yeah, you're American. You're American. Oh, the American kid's back from America. So there's tons of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. If you want to, give me an idea about where you want to start or the sort of things you want to talk about.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
but we can just start and go from there. It's up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. How do you pronounce your last name?
Oh, it's Boxall, Boxall, Boxall.
Boxall. That's a typical last name, or is it a?
No, not really. And obviously, I work with, everybody I work with is American. And when I do US shows,
Uh-huh.
the pronunciation is always the question. How do you pronounce that?
It's cool.
But it's not common. It's not common here particularly.
Uh-huh.
But no, you're quite right. Your pronunciation is correct.
Boxall.
So.
Okay. So I'm on your. So you're a writer for Digital Trends.
Yes.
Is there a specific title, or you're head of something?
You can call me. I mean, you can just call me a tech journalist if you like.
Okay.
If you want to mention Digital Trends, I'm senior writer at Digital Trends on the mobile team.
Oh, on the mobile team. Cool. Yeah,
I write for mobile.
I'm just reading through this profile that you have on your writer's profile. It talks about like how you've been a fan for a while, but it took you a long time before actually getting into writing and.
Are you reading that on Digital Trends?
Yeah. This is this is your official one on the Digital Trends, right?
Yeah, I think that's been up there since I started writing from about 7 years ago. So I don't necessarily remember what that was.
Well, it says you started writing about like travel and films and cars.
Yeah, travel was my first writing job was travel related, and that wasn't very exciting, even though it sounds like it should be. It really wasn't.
Really?
No, it wasn't great. I didn't do a lot of traveling. That was a trouble. Maybe if I did a lot more traveling as a travel writer, it would have been great. But ultimately, it wasn't about that, which is a shame. But yeah, then tech was something that I was interested in, and I managed to find a tech news writing job, and well, it went from there and has become what it is today. And I've written for DT for, like I say, about 7 years.
Oh, that's cool. That's really awesome. That you're able
I love it.
Yeah, it's cool when you see people who are into something and then they get to do more of it as an actual profession.
Yeah, it's the dream, right? The job that you do, if you love it as a hobby or an interest, and you get paid for it, then I don't think there's much better.
Yeah, it's pretty great. So I want to jump into the idle talk, but I read one of the articles, your most recent articles. It's been a big thing here in America, the whole iPhone battery slowing down the processor thing going on. And I read through it and it made a lot of sense what you were saying. I don't know if you wanted to like explain it a little bit. I feel like people tend to overreact very quickly. And they see very, very black and white, like, oh, they're slowing it down? Okay, that's terrible. Bad, and everybody freaks out. But you're talking about how they're actually doing it because you don't want your phones to be crashing all the time?
Yeah, it's overreaction, and black or white thing is it's an online phenomenon that seems to have found its way into everyday life, and everybody is that way about something.
Yeah.
It's also, because it's Apple, that splits opinion straight down the middle. People either love what they do or hate what they do.
Right.
Therefore, it becomes this big thing. In my opinion, I write it in the article. They should have been more transparent about it.
Right.
They weren't. I'm not sure there was a conspiracy behind it to make you buy a new phone.
Right.
I think they're actually just giving you a better user experience
Right.
through a
Like,
way that people could misinterpret.
right. Because you said like if they had put in this check engine light kind of thing going on, it would have been
Exactly.
transparent from the beginning, and people would kind of be like, "Oh, okay, I understand why it's there," and then there wouldn't have been this big negative
No,
reaction.
the negative reaction might have been, oh no, my battery's breaking. I either need to buy a new phone or need to buy a new battery. There would have been that complaining about it,
Right.
but it wouldn't have been, oh, Apple's slowing down their phone to make more money to get us to buy more
Yeah, there's
phones.
this conspiracy
That's
or
very different, and I really don't think that that's the case.
because you said the battery technology is still no good, right? I mean, it has
But technology is what it is. It hasn't drastically changed in the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years probably,
Mhm.
and we're not really that close to a big breakthrough. I've spoken to companies for the last, oh God, 5 years about the next breakthrough, and they're still not here. So
Yeah.
we're still waiting to see what they do with graphene batteries. We're still waiting to see what they do with other forms of technology to enhance battery stability and to get more life out of batteries that are still small enough and have a long lasting life to fit into a mobile device. It's
Yeah.
really, really difficult. That's why it's happening.
And the best point is like you said it right in the article. You said that people are complaining about these phones is they're not gonna last forever, but like what are you actually gonna hang on to these phones for like 10 years or something? People are switching
Yeah,
these phones out anyways, so what's the big deal?
that's it. The minority hangs on to them for longer than probably 2 years. In the US, what a standard contract is about 2 years.
Yeah, it takes you about 2 years to pay it off.
Ultimately, are you going to change your phone after 2 years because the carrier's going to contact you anyway? They're going to make a point. They're the ones probably pushing harder to get you to buy a new phone than
Right,
Apple.
there's a new phone every year at least, and they're better specs and better camera and better this and better that, and just
Exactly.
the battery is the least of your concerns, I think, at that point.
Yeah. If you're really worried about battery life and you really want to make your phone last longer, don't buy an iPhone. Buy something else with a massive battery that will serve your needs.
Yeah.
It's one of those stories that there was a lot of conversation about it,
Right.
a very big deal, like you said, a big deal made out of it
But it should have been.
for the wrong reasons.
Right.
No, they should be talking about it because Apple should have been more transparent,
Uh-huh.
but perhaps there was a bit of an overreaction.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you want to check it out, I'll make sure I'll link the article. I think it's a great read.
Thanks.
But talking, I guess, about overreaction, that it's the idol industry. There's oftentimes a lot of overreaction and these kind of. You said that you feel it's more of a like an online thing.
I mean, in terms of the idol industry, I don't know how much overreaction there is. I tend not to be deeply involved in the news.
Right.
But I think overreaction is an online thing.
It's an online
Yeah.
thing. You don't think it's just like
It's,
a human thing, but just online.
it's easier to voice,
Yeah.
particularly if we're talking about Twitter or we're talking about things where there's a small amount of characters that you have to voice your reaction. It
Yeah.
tends to be black or white.
Right.
Then reads like an overreaction if it comes down on one side.
Yeah, it's very hard to read people online because
Yeah.
it's just in words. There's no intonation or facial expressions to go along with what they're saying. So
Exactly.
So really quick, if we can get a little bit of background about your experience in the with as an Idol fan, or I started following you, I think, when you were making your trip to Japan.
Okay.
You made a recent trip to Japan, right?
That's it, October 2017.
Okay, so that was, but you had been there before.
Yes.
Okay.
But not as an Idol fan.
Oh, not as an Idol fan. So this is your first trip as an Idol fan. You went to a few shows. It seems like.
Yeah, I did. The day after I got there, I went to a large concert, or large that I went to see Bish.
Oh, cool.
That was my first Idol concert experience in Japan. And
so everyone's jumping around crazy and climbing on each other and stuff.
There were two levels, and you could have been down in the sort of lower level right next to the stage, and there were a lot of people jumping around there. I wasn't in that bit. I was on the raised level where people were a little bit more sensible.
Right.
And it wasn't quite so full on.
Right.
So I got to sort of observe the jumping around from a distance.
That's cool. And you enjoyed that one.
It was really great. It felt very like a regular concert, although there were no phones. That was actually something that really struck me because
Oh,
every concert to in the UK, and I'm sure in the US,
yes.
everybody's got their phone.
Right.
Well, phones weren't allowed.
Right.
You weren't allowed to take pictures. You weren't allowed to take video, and everybody followed that rule. So you watched the concert. You
Right.
didn't watch your phone.
Which is refreshing for me because whenever these groups come to America, like everybody's just so focused on getting their phone out and recording the experience. Like in Japan, it's not even an issue. It's just known that you don't pull out your phone, so everyone's just enjoying the concert.
That's it. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you went to see Bish. Well, how did you? You said this is your first trip as an Idol fan, so you just recently like started following them, or
I guess when I first discovered Idols would have been 2015,
okay, so
thereabouts.
okay,
But
so not
I
super
sort of
like not super recently.
no, but it was difficult because in the UK, you're not in Japan for a start. So in the UK, very few people have heard of Idols, and very few people would know any of the music.
Hmm.
So you have to do it online,
Right.
and you have to learn from that. And if you don't read Japanese,
Hmm.
there's a very small amount of very small resources to understand in English and read in English.
Absolutely.
So it's this sort of minefield of trying to find out what it means and if you like one group, where that fits in sort of grand scheme of things. So it takes longer than perhaps if I lived in Japan, where they're very
Absolutely.
much easier.
And so you got introduced through this through. It says you're a Hatsune Miku fan, right? So
That's it. Miku was my introduction to Japanese music.
oh, Japanese
But
music. I see. I see.
yeah, because I don't think Miku is this or the music that I like
Hmm.
that's made using Hatsune Miku isn't really idolish. It's,
More.
in my opinion, Miku really suits EDM, electronic dance music. So anything like that, I think Miku sounds fantastic in.
I see.
But when you listen to sort of her more idol-like songs,
Right.
it's not my favorite, but it certainly made me think, well, where does that influence come from? Because the technology was what excited me first and what made me interested. Then you start to think, well, where is that influence? You know, what's the significance of the hundreds of people that are in the crowd waving their glow sticks? Why do they do that? Where does that come from? Is that only a Miku thing?
I see.
And then, of course, it goes from there. You then begin to see actually she's part of a larger idol music culture.
Right. Okay. So you actually like searched up and then you found a group or
Miku was first, and then I guess probably just like every other idol fan, you hear of AKB48,
uh-huh.
and you see some of those videos, and you either like it or you hate it. Um, I liked it. Probably the same as everybody else. You see the big name videos first, and you think this is pretty unusual.
You,
But
do,
then,
do you remember the first video you saw?
oh god, it was heavy rotation.
Oh, that's always the
Exactly.
worst. I tell
Exactly.
people every time I'm like, dude, that's the worst video to show
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
because they're
But you either think, well, this can't be it. This can't be only what idols are about.
right.
You either think, I don't care what else is out there because this is not for me. But I thought this can't be because Miku isn't like this.
Right.
There has to be something beyond.
So cooler heads prevailed, right? You took a
Yeah,
step back and said, this can't be what it's all about. There's got to be more to this than that, right?
that's it. Yeah, that's it.
That's
And
that's great. It's really. Oh, I wish there were more people like that.
but it's hard though, isn't it? Because heavy rotation and any video that AKB48 made around that time
Yeah.
is fairly.
It's
I don't think it's representative of what they are today.
and even those as a fan, those are like very high quality, like very beloved videos. But it's kind of like walking in on a soap opera and you don't know the storyline. And you just see some guy like doing some crazy thing, and it's just you can't explain. It's so hard to explain. It's terrible. It's so
It is, but it is what people think idols are. Because I'm sure if you search Japanese idol music video on YouTube,
yeah,
that's going to be one of the top results,
absolutely
and that's going to be your takeaway.
right.
That's idols. But luckily, I went a bit beyond that, and I think probably around that time I watched Love Live. the anime. I don't know if you know Love Live.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And that's about school idols. And
Right.
the music's really cool, and the characters are really funny. And I watched that and really enjoyed it. And in the UK, there's an annual Japanese culture festival called Hyper Japan.
Right.
And they occasionally bring over idol groups to perform live.
Mm-hmm.
2015, this was.
2015.
And they brought over Dempagumi.
That was Dempa, right?
Yeah.
I remember.
Tokyo Girl Style were there. Honey Spice.
Honey Spice.
Honey Spice. They were awesome.
I think they're still around. I think they've had a couple
They
number
are
switches.
different lineup, but they were cool. And
So my friend he's what does he do? He works with like lasers or something. But I guarantee he was there.
right,
He was definitely there.
and had Rio Hiraga.
Hiragi Rio, you're right.
Yeah, and she was cool. And Yarawi, she does. She's not really an idol. She's a Japanese sort of rock music. She does anime themes. She did one for Sword Art Online and a few others.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my first sort of idol experience. They had handshake events after it. So they signed stuff, and you got that proper sort of, hold on, is this what it's like to be an idol fan in Japan? And that really was the sort of beginning.
Okay, so what about that like spoke to you? Because like we kind of talked about the Tokyo Girls documentary that was filmed. Hiragi Ryo was in that also. And I actually just watched that last night, kind of as a refresher. And there's a part in the video in the documentary where they're talking about these handshakes. It's like it's in Japan. It's a very sexual thing, and I'm sure there's a sexual component that these fans are coming to experience. And they make the experience, the whole idol experience, the meeting idols, as this very kind of weird, creepy. Because they specifically go and show like, this 47-year-old guy, he's gonna go, or this 23-year-old college student is gonna meet this like 14-year-old idol, and they're gonna shake hands, and that's seen as a sexual gesture. And so, like, when you went to go see them for the first time, I mean, when I go to the shows, there are some of the weirder people that you kind of like, but overall, it's not really like that to me.
No, I mean, the UK handshake events are not like that at all. It's really, it's very ordinary. It's sort of, hello, how are you? Welcome to England. Have you been to Japan? The regular sort of, if I met a tourist, that sort of thing. It's not sexual in the slightest. Now, I've done handshake events in Japan.
Right.
So I met Hokaga Princess, Clip Clip, and who are underground idols, I guess you'd call them.
Right.
But I'd like to talk a bit more about them in a second, but I did a big event with them, and I was there from the very beginning, setting up the event to the very end when everybody left. So I had sort of a full immersion into what it's like to go into an idol event of maybe a couple of hundred people in Japan. And so I saw that whole spectrum of fans, from regular people to probably the really obsessive.
Right.
And I mean, I saw them, they're doing the dancing, they're doing their sort of joining in with all the gestures and the callbacks. And then they did the handshake event afterwards. And I mean, I didn't see anything that was sexually charged at all. It was really respectful and really friendly and incredibly genuine. It was support, and it wasn't at all creepy, and it wasn't at all weird. I'm sure, as we saw in Tokyo Girls, the documentary, the creepy ones exist.
Right.
But I never met them, and they certainly sort of weren't making themselves known.
Right.
And it absolutely wasn't the majority. It's a tiny percentage.
Absolutely.
I never saw anybody who I thought, yeah, you're a bit of a worry, mate. It really, none of that.
I mean, it's difficult because the way a lot of these documentaries or videos that people make, it's partially going to be because of the controversy or the fear, like you see it on the news all the time. Yeah, they want you to be scared, so they show you the scariest thing that could happen. Just yesterday I was reading the first thing that pops up on my Facebook when I get on is, oh hey, this guy ate sushi every day and he developed a tapeworm that was 1.5 meters long, to the point where the tapeworm was coming out of him when he went to the bathroom. And I was like, as soon as I read that, I'm like, oh God, do I ever want to eat sushi again?
Right. It's the same thing with every machine on the corner in Japan sells panties.
Panties, right? Exactly.
It's exactly the same, because I've been to Japan a few times.
Right.
Never seen one machine selling panties.
Sure. I'm sure there's certain places that have them, but
absolutely.
I mean,
are they on every street corner?
Yeah, as a foreigner, you're not going to be walking on the street and just come across this. But you said you wanted to go back to. You said you'd go back to and talk to about.
Oh yeah. Well, it sort of goes on from what we were saying about that sort of creepy, hypersexualized view of idol fans.
Right.
And I haven't found that. I've found instead it's just this incredibly inclusive, really friendly group of people,
right,
who want you to be part of that group of fans.
Right. Like, because the only qualification is you just have to be into it. You have to support them, and then if you meet that requirement, then you're just part of the group.
Yeah, and it's not weird. It's not sort of, and because the majority of the fans are Japanese, it's never pushy. It's never, well, you've got to do this or you've got to do that, or
right.
This whole sort of big deal. Instead, it's, you really like this group. You might have a favorite singer in the group, but you might not. That's great. I feel the same. Let's support them together. And I think that's really nice. And it's happened twice to me, actually 3 times, but twice online. Once with Clip, where I've spoken to one of the vocalists a lot on Twitter over the last year or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got in contact with a major fan who invited me to see their show when I went to Japan.
Right.
And he made my experience, I mean, way beyond what it would have been otherwise. So did she, the singer, Ryoko. She's amazing. And it was fantastic, an experience I'll never forget, that I wouldn't have had if the fans hadn't have been so welcoming. And it's happened again. It's not just a unique thing to Clip.
Right.
I follow Mirai Skirt, and over the last couple of weeks, somebody reached out and said, we're fans too. They sent me a CD that's not available on Amazon or any of the import services, and that's unsolicited. That's fans welcoming fans.
No, absolutely.
And I can't think of many other places that do that, except, in my experience, idol fandom.
Absolutely, that's very, very good points. Because there's a lot to be said about, look, these AKB fans are gonna buy mountains of CDs and they just want to support their members. They're so selfish. But like, from my experience, it's the exact same as yours. Like, whenever I go to a show, if they see like, oh hey, that foreign guy's into this group, and they'll start, if they build up the courage to come talk to me, we'll talk a little bit, and then they're most times they'll be like this, hey, do you have their CDs? You already have their CDs? No? Oh, here, I'll have them. I'll bring it to you. You come in the next show, I'll bring them for you. Or, and they just give them to me. It's not like, hey, I'll sell them to you or anything. It's just straight up.
Exactly. When I saw Hokago Princess in Japan, I went to a really it's a big thing for me as a foreigner to go to an event that wasn't really advertised, and it was in a basement of a bookshop, which was a small stage, but they were performing there, just a small event to show their new song.
Right.
So it was really small, maybe 100 people, and I went there without really knowing what to do and not really knowing if I was in the right place or anything.
But it's really great, right? Because it's just something that it's confusing and it's weird, but it's kind of like this exploration experience.
And because I had that idea that people, it's not like going here. If I did that in England, I would feel awkward and I would feel nervous, but there it's different. It just feels different because nobody really cares. Everybody's there to see the group.
Right.
Nobody cares about you or what you're doing. It's very much in the way I felt. I could just stand at the back and enjoy it and then go and no one would notice.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. I met a guy there. He came up and spoke to me and he offered me the little tickets afterwards,
Right.
so I could actually meet one of the members,
Right.
and then get a photo, and then eventually get something signed. And I hadn't paid for any of that, I hadn't signed up. It was just his kindness,
Yeah.
and because we both liked the same singer in the group, and
You're
it's
talking about
just
Sasara.
yeah,
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 she's very, very funny. She's very cool. Very, very cool person.
really is, really is. And to meet her in person, it was really great,
Yeah,
really fantastic.
she's really because the thing is let's see I went to go see Hokago back in October of 2016.
Oh right,
Yeah, so it's been a long time since I was in Japan last, but even before that, it had been like 8 months, and I've only met her like once or twice. I've only met her like once or twice, and I was at a show where she was at, and they were all lining up to do the merchandise sales, and I was walking by to get in line, and she's like, "Oh, hey," and she just waves at me, and it's like, "Hey, David." I don't know how these idols do it, but they're like they can remember everybody's names, and that's part of their I guess professional life is to have to be able to remember people's names and make them feel welcome. But I mean, it was still amazing for me to think that it had been I'd only met her twice, like it'd been 8 months since I seen her, and she still remembered me from last time. So
right, yeah. It was similar for me because I'd not met her before, but she remembered that I retweeted stuff of hers on Twitter, or I might comment on something, or I might, and so she put those things together. And I, in my professional life, I have to deal with people online and offline, and I forget. I don't remember.
yeah,
And I don't have anywhere near the interaction of fans that she does. And
absolutely.
it's a real talent, just for making people feel special. And I think that's the definition of an idol, anyway, for me.
Making people feel special.
Yeah.
In America,
You were saying about Hokago Princess. I actually want to know what you thought of them when you saw them live, because that must have been when Sasara would have been just a full member after she was a cadet.
right. I saw him a couple times. So I was lucky because I made friends with one guy in Japan who like literally we would be walking on the street, and then there'd be a girl walking by, and he'd be like, "Oh, hey." And I was like, and he would start talking to her for a little bit, and then just like, "All right, see you later, bye." And I was like, oh, "Okay, who was that?" Oh, she's like, "Oh, that's the idol from whatever group." So like, I don't know how he just, I guess he had a lot of money, or he had been in the fandom for a long time. But literally, like every other time I went out with him, every time I went out with him, he would run into some other fan for sure.
Right.
And then every other time we would go out, there would be an idol that he would run into. And so like he's the one who got me into Hokago because he was really into that group, and he was always taking me to see groups that he liked. And yeah, but I saw them before. I saw her perform when she was just a trainee in their little undergroup, and then actually when she got, I'd seen her only once after she had become actually a full-fledged member and everything. So it's
so great to see how she's become such a key member since she became full, right? Because she's a major part of their videos, and she sings major roles in the songs, and it's really great because she's a good singer, and I think she's a great representative for the group itself.
She's really, really well. First of all, she speaks English. She speaks fluent English, so that's kind of a surprise. But also, she's got this very elegant thing. I don't know if they do it now anymore, but there was this idol cafe in Shibuya where you can go, and there's the idols are the actual like cafe workers. And that's when I talked to her the first time. My friend was like, "Hey, let's go to this cafe." And I'm like, "A cafe? What?" And he took me there, and she was working, and so like, you actually had time to like, I don't know if that was before. Maybe she's too popular now. I don't know if she still goes there, but
I'd imagine she'd get mobbed if so, because there was a lot of fans when I saw this.
But I was confused because I was trying to like, so you're really into this stuff, right? Because she came off to me when I talked to her. She just seems to be a very like motivated person.
Yeah,
like just
really
super
positive,
wanting to make it, or wanting to like pursue her dream. I mean, just it just seemed very. That's the impression I got from her from talking to her, and it was cool too because I never got this feeling like, because I almost felt like working at a cafe is like beneath her, right? She's an idol. She's going to perform. She has all these fans. She's going to see all the time, but then she's like has to work in this like dinky little cafe, like serving drinks and kind of talking to people. I just thought it was a very weird situation, but it never got that from her, where she was just like, "Hey, yeah, I'm here. I'm here to talk to people. Here you go. Here's your food.
Yeah,
What would you like?"
yeah. I also think that's a kind of maybe a Western way of looking at working in cafes,
Hmm.
because maybe there's a difference, because it is all about interacting with fans and gaining support.
Hmm.
And I guess that's as good a way as any to do it.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing about the handshakings and stuff, I just see it as like accessibility. Like
Mm.
it's not like we talked earlier about the like the sexual handshakes, but it's there is this definitely this element of, oh, I'm touching them for real, right? I remember the first time I went to go
Yeah.
see like idols, you would see them on stage and you're like, wow, these are the people I see on YouTube and I see them on TV all the time. There they are, and
Mm.
there's this very surreal like realization that they're actually real people and not just somebody made up. But and then I think going into this, the whole, because I've said this a lot with like if you imagine, I don't know who's popular in the UK, but like like a celebrity or like an actor. Like if you were to go meet some of the people from like the Marvel movies or something, like meeting him in person and shaking their hands is kind of I think it'd be really cool if there were actually a way for people to do that. I think a lot of people would go and do that too. But
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that was the idea behind AKB48 originally, wasn't it? It was
right,
idols you can meet.
yes,
And that's, I guess, if we're all honest, there has to be people who take that in a sexual manner of going and shaking the hand and being in such close proximity.
right. You just want to be weird or something like that.
Exactly. And there's going to be people who are going to do that, whatever. The
Hmm.
people who go and meet those people who in Marvel movies,
Right.
there's going to be those people too.
Sure, but I think the way they set it up with idols is they kind of make it so like if you see a celebrity and you're at the airport and you're sitting there and he or she is sitting there and you have to go and actually approach them and ask them
Yeah.
for, hey, can I get an autograph? Hey, can I shake your hand? Can I take a picture? I think that's a big hump to get over.
I should say.
Some
I
people
wouldn't
wouldn't
want to do it.
Yeah, some people won't want to do it. They don't want to make they don't want to make a fool of themselves. But when you have it laid out the way it is with idols, where it's just kind of, it's almost like a formality. Okay, so anybody want to take a handshake? Okay, great. Here's your opportunity. Pay the money,
Yeah.
and it just becomes. I think there's a little bit less. I know a lot of people, especially the Westerners, see that as a very weird thing. Like, oh, it's. I remember I've talked to people where there are events that I go to where they actually have like a stopwatch, right? So when I go,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, go, and then they're like, that's so weird, David.
Yeah.
Why do they have a stopwatch? Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? It's like if you were cooking and you wanted to cook a steak or fry some French fries. A lot of places have like stopwatch. Like, okay, I threw them in, hit the stopwatch. Now, when they're finished, you gotta take them out.
Yeah.
It's just a timing thing. It's not anything
Yeah.
weird.
And you've got the security guards who move you on,
Right.
and it's the way it is.
Yeah.
But for me, when I get that chance for the handshake, we call it a handshake event, but that for me is not the reason I'm there.
It's
The reason I go and meet them is to say, I think you're fantastic. I really liked the way you did this. I really liked your voice. I really liked
right.
that song. Or it's a way for me to say, I really like what you do. Thank you very much, because it brings something to my life.
Right.
I don't get that chance to do it anywhere else.
No,
if
absolutely.
I watch that Marvel film, hey, it was cool. I thought he was great or she was great. But I'm never going to get the chance to tell them
Right.
this. I get the chance to say, that's fantastic. I'm so pleased you're doing this.
Right. It's repaying it almost.
Yeah. And if that makes them feel good for doing what they're doing, fantastic, because what they do makes me feel good.
Yeah, that's absolutely one of the lost the outcomes from idol interactions is this whole like cyclical falling back on each other, just kind of folding over and over. Like they do something you like, you support them. It's very difficult to explain, I guess, to non-fans or to
It
new
is,
fans.
because it's very unique to the idol industry. I don't know any other sort of entertainment or fan-driven genre that works like that, that's so interactive, and the entertainer is seemingly so dependent on the fan.
Yeah, and so in the UK, it's pretty anime, Japanese culture. How big are those in the UK?
I think it's got bigger over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Anime certainly is very popular amongst a lot of different age groups. Japanese culture is fairly popular, but I think it's still quite niche.
So yeah.
And Idols again is really a niche within a very big niche already. So
Yeah.
I if I can't say I know anybody else who is into Idols in the UK personally. I know there are, but I don't personally know any.
And there's no way to like come out and express yourself about this. They go walking around the street with a sign or something.
I guess I could, but I'm not sure I want to bring that much attention to myself. I mean, you do it online. If you want to connect with fans in the UK, you
Hmm.
can do that. In my experience, looking online, there's a lot of Idol fans who are into niches of niches. There's a lot of people who are into quite heavy metal style Idol bands. So
Right.
Baby Metal is the big one, obviously, and then there's a lot of other smaller groups who aren't what I like,
Uh-huh.
but they have a very big following in the UK. There's a definite metal idol following, far more than the cuter or the EDM style idol.
So I generally try to keep these short shows pretty short, like under an hour. So
Sure.
is there any topic you'd want to cover, or any bands you specifically want to talk about or promote before we end this?
To talk about or promote, no, I've seen you've come out against Tokyo Girl Style a couple of times. Is that right? You've come out and said that you're not a fan of Tokyo Girl Style a few times. Is that
It's
right?
yeah. I don't know if it's not a fan. I mean, I don't dislike them. I don't hate them. If they came to the U.S. and it was within, if I didn't have to jump through these amazing hoops to go see them, yeah, sure, I'd go.
Because they were cool. I've seen them and they were really awesome, and I think their music's really great. But
Yeah, I don't think I when I was really starting in to get like take the fandom more seriously, I think they were coming up and being popular, but they at that time they were like super young. They were like 14 or
right,
15, and I think I always felt kind of, again, it's not because I'm like, oh man, I want to go date these girls. It was just one of
yeah,
those things where it's like, well, I can't really. You try to find something to relate to, right? And it's
mm,
kind of hard to relate to girls at that age because like when they get older, like 16, 17, 18, you kind of a lot of the themes are like, oh well, I'm chasing my dream and I got to work hard and I got to do these things, and you can kind of understand those kind of themes a little bit better.
yeah, and they've changed a lot in their musical style anyway. The older stuff I didn't particularly like anyway, but the newer sort of dance music orientated things, it's really good, and it's a different sort of idol music. It's not regular idol. It's not super cute. It's not a 48 or 46 group idol song. It's very different. I like it a lot.
So maybe that's something I need to go look into it. Yeah, because it has been years since I actively
Right,
tried to listen to them. Because at the time,
right.
I think when they first came out, there really weren't that many other options. Like making it across the pond, they were one
Mm,
of the few that actually had you could find their music pretty easily.
right.
But yeah, okay. Well, if there's a style change, I'm more than open to go give them another shot.
They're just one that came up, and I've mentioned the other ones who I really like. We've talked
Clip,
about those. Clip
clip, clip.
Clip, I'm a big fan of. Mirai Skirt, I'm a big fan of. Hokkaido Princess. And then other big names, Nogizaka 46, Bish and Up Girls, Idol Renaissance, all that sort of thing. Really, really fun groups. But I don't have a particular one that I like. I like many,
No, that's good. I think it's good to branch out and enjoy it all.
without a doubt. The only other thing that we mentioned before starting that we were going to talk about is that Idol fans just aren't only interested in idols, that we're interested in other things. We're just regular people, not focused.
Right. That's a
I
big
think that's an important thing to say because we've talked about idols for this whole podcast, and
right.
it
But
makes us sound as if we only
no,
involve
no,
in
no. But
idols, and that
I mean, that's how we got started talking because you write for Digital Trends.
right,
You're
yeah,
obviously into the tech, and those are kind of in the same geek culture sort of genres. But I mean, you said you'd like to travel. You're into cars. You have a collection of cars. I think it said.
oh, I wish. No, I only have one car, but yeah, it's sort of. I don't want to be labelled as a. This is what I do, and I don't think other idol fans are the same. I think if you're a fan of music, just like you might be a fan of music in America or in the UK,
Right.
I don't think it's really any different. It's this strange label that has been put on being an idol fan that I don't think fits. It's just the same as if I was a fan of any other group in the world.
Right.
It's just I happen to be a fan of an idol in Japan.
Right.
I don't know if you think the same thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because you could be in the documentary. He's like, "Oh, I was a really big fan of U2, and I was really into U2, and I had posters on my wall of U2." It's just, it's the link, right? I think people tend to kind of overlay their own thoughts onto other people, because I think that's something I experienced when I was growing up, because my parents tried to ingrain these very Chinese ideals behind me. So when I went to school, I started thinking other people were like that. In my experience, Chinese people kind of tend to talk about other people a lot. There's a lot of, I don't know how to say it, but there's a lot of shit talking. There's a lot of like, oh, do you see that? Oh, my parents were always like, oh, did you see so and so's your cousin? They're graduating, or they didn't get into this school, or there's a lot of that going on. Right. So I think when I started going out into the real world, into the workplace, outside of my family life, I started automatically assuming that other people were thinking that way of me. So it was this very weird situation where I just kind of felt suspicious of everybody initially, until I started like really, really talking to people, or just realizing that not everybody thinks that way. And so I feel like with the idol industry, it's a little bit like that. Like everybody looks in, is like, oh, well, there's a girl singer and she's young and he's old, so he must be into her because. And I think that, like, for their worldview, that's all they've kind of experienced. So that's the way they think. So they assume other people must be like them too. Yeah. Whereas I've always felt like there are probably guys in the world that are into cute things, and as weird as it sounds, they just like it for some reason. I'm sure there's somebody out there who has like a big Hello Kitty collection just because that's his thing, or
without a doubt, and more power to him if that's
right. Absolutely, but and there are people here like we're trying to label him weird because of what he's into. But if that's what he's into, what's the problem?
It's not hurting anybody. If he wants to be Hello Kitty fan, then whatever.
Yeah, then that's how I see it. I see, like you said, there's people who are into the music and they like the music, and the formula of the whole support dynamic. I think people automatically, they can only see what they see, so they automatically start imprinting their ideas onto assuming that's how other people think too.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, that was really the only extra thing that I thought would be cool to cover.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's the thing. I've met so many people over the last, I want to say like 4 years. Over the last 4 years, I've really started going out and trying to talk to people. Originally, it was just like my little bubble with all the friends that I had. But then the last 4 years, I've been going out to shows, and like it's amazing because I've met. First of all, I meet a lot of idol fans from Japan that like travel. Because I went to this last year, I was in San Francisco, I was in Mexico, and there's people like Japanese people who just come out here. I'm like, oh, well, you ever been to Mexico before? No. Oh, so you just came just for the idol? So, like, it's almost like that's their trigger for, like, exploring the world is, well, I have to go support her. I have to go. So I'm going to go to this country. I don't speak the language. I don't know anything about it. How am I going to get around? But they overcome that so that they can go just to the show, which is very, very, very inspiring almost.
It is. And from that support angle as well, I think it's nice. I'm sure I see it as innocent. I'm sure that sometimes it isn't, but it is innocent. I support that group or that singer to the extent where I'm happy to travel and see her perform on stage in another country. I think that's awesome.
Right. And I think the appreciation is the only thing. They're not really looking for anything to come back, but the fact that they can meet the idol and they're like, oh, thanks so much for coming. That that amount of appreciation is enough to keep them coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so that's great. I have a lot of friends. Like I have a friend who's like he's a power lifter.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's like this big guy and he's lifting like 300 pounds, going to the gym every day, and he's into idols. I met this one guy who he literally was a farmer. Like, that was his job, is to wake up early in the morning, drive it out there and till the land and plant the seeds, and then, like, commercial farmer, like, he had a farm.
Right.
And so, he's out in the middle of nowhere, and so he was just going on iTunes. He would just go on iTunes, buy all the idol music that gets released. Like, he literally buys everything, and then just puts it on his iPod and goes out there and works the field. And, like, I was like, wow, and this is just randomly me meeting people. It's not even me, like, going specifically out to find them,
because those people are really different, not what you'd expect the average idol fan to be.
Absolutely.
And I wonder what their inspiration for being an idol fan is. I mean,
right.
Why do they like that?
Yeah.
attracted them to it in the first place.
No, and that's what I'm so fascinated about. This.
Yeah. For me, to do that when people say, why do you like this? Because perhaps the music isn't to their taste, or sometimes it's not that fantastic. But there's a degree of happiness and joy that comes out of it that I feel. And when I listen to it or when I see them live, I get that in return. I get that happy and joyous feeling. And maybe I don't get that out of many other forms of entertainment. And I wonder if that's the same for the farmer in his tractor or the powerlifter.
I mean, seriously, it's such a weird mix of people. At the Idol shows, you probably saw like some really young kids, right? Like high school, college kids.
Yeah.
But then you saw like the older, like these guys are definitely like working in a professional job.
Yeah, and way beyond that, and guys and girls and women and young girls. It was an entire mixture. It wasn't just middle-aged guys.
Right. It can be very inclusive. There's no like, oh, you can't be part of this. It's fascinating to me. This is why I'm so happy to talk to people like you. Just people from all walks of life.
Right. Yeah, unraveling the Idol fan mystery.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Andy, for being on the show.
Pleasure, no problem.
I just really enjoyed talking to you, man. It was great.
It was
Hopefully, we'll be able to meet sometime, maybe in Japan, go to a show together.
Very cool. Exactly. Yeah, we're going to do an Idol show together and a handshake again. That'd be good.
Okay. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.